All right. Hope everyone's doing all right today. Sorry, you might hear a loud noise on the mic. Okay, sorry about that. All right, so this is a part of my whole 31 day Halloween thing. This was very spontaneous. So, like, I had no preparation or anything when I started to do this 31-day thing, and sadly, I only have a few things recorded, and it's already the ninth. Um, what's going on with my phone? I guess the Wi-Fi is acting up. But anyway, forgot what it is I was saying. Oh yeah. So 31 days of Halloween. I was gonna look at 31 movies or TV shows and do reviews on them, but it ended up turning into a whole 31 days of just watching slashers and horror movies and just kind of talking about them as I watch them. But yeah, so anyway, this is going to be my review for season two of Dexter. Season two, I thought season one of Dexter was going to be difficult to talk about, but season two of Dexter is going to be much harder because the themes and the elements of season two are kind of all over the place between recovery, um, and acceptance and healing, and a little bit of those elements do kind of go bleed into season five, and I don't want to be repetitive about it. So it is a little difficult to talk about season two. I'm going to be talking about my experience with season two as I'm watching through the entire season right now. I'm just gonna kind of fast forward through the whole season, and I'm going to be talking about some things as I'm cutting through. You may or may not hear some lines in the background. I don't know. But yeah, so season two, I mainly want to focus. But yeah, I guess a lot of it is about exposure, um, and just things like that. So this is going to be a very rough season to talk about, very hard. But I am going for it. And I have no idea when I'm actually going to release this one because season one was so rough that I might actually release this one first, season two first. But yeah, I talked a little bit about the seven deadly sins of each character, each main character, what they represent, and main character, how every main character in Dexter represents a part of his psyche, and a lot of times the killers that Dexter kills in throughout the show, throughout season one, they were actually reflections of monsters that he could be, and each victim was him killing off that possible side of him. There were two that I can think of, two storylines or story arcs that I did not mention in season or three. I did not mention in season one. One of them was about this kid who was in the trunk of a car, and he peeked out and saw, Dexter kidnapping this couple, and so they had to get a police report on him. They were like, "Oh, who draw a picture of who you saw that saved you." I wanted to talk a little bit about that, but I didn't. I skipped it, and I might save that for season six to go more into that. The second plot line that I skipped was that same episode when Dexter kidnapped that couple and was trying to figure out, how do you guys make it work? You both are doing this bad thing. You're both doing it together. I didn't really think too much about that, but yeah, him doing that was more of growing in his relationship with Rita, or is killing that couple was basically eliminating the idea of Dexter being able to have a partner or a romantic partner that kills with him. Um, Now that is different from season five, Lumen. When I get to season five, I'll talk about that. The third plot point that I did not touch on in season one was Rita going through her abuse, and a little bit of Batista also betraying himself. being while representing loyalty and how he's coping with being disloyal to the better parts of himself. I felt like that was a very important thing to touch on and talk about, but it was after I did the recording. But yeah, so anyway, enough of this whole 5 minute intro. But yeah, hope maybe I'll get back to that one day. Maybe we'll see. But yeah, here's season two. And again, I have to repeat this. I'm on my PS3, so the motor sounds like a jet engine. Well, it's not too bad right now, but I have my air conditioner and my PS3 on right now to try and circulate some cool air to stop the PS3 from overheating. I thought it was broken the last year, and long story short, it's not. It's alright. It's still kicking. So I'm watching this on my PS3. So if you do hear a lot of wind or noise or blowing, that's yeah, technology. So I actually watched this episode, this first episode, with a buddy of mine, not too long ago, and yeah, he hated it. He really does hate the show. Anyway, so "Bold Till You Bleed," yeah, that was him. That's Dexter's biological dad being a bowler champion bowler, whatever. Dexter inherited that from his dad, so that was interesting little Easter egg reference in the show. And now you have Batista. I'll get to that later. I'll get that a little bit. Or yeah, I can skip to the episode. Do do do. Here it is. So yeah, Batista is talking about, oh, you got to manifest that in the universe. You got to have positive thoughts and things like that. A man who's always trying to better himself and be the best version that he can in some way, always trying to, fix his mistakes and try to do better to not hurt anybody in the future. Those are very nice people, and it's good to support people like that, and in a sense of when you know that they don't have harmful intentions, that they really do want to do good, they really want to do their best. It's good to just be a friend. I'll just say that it's good to be a friend. Sometimes philosophy and being a good person don't always mix. So, being nice to somebody and caring about them may be contradicted by, oh, they're going down this path, huh? Well, you know what? That doesn't make any sense to me, so I'm going to be mean to that. I'm not making any sense. Yeah, you got to think positive, bro, because what we think creates the universe around us. It's all about that energy, good energy, bro. Interconnectedness. Yeah, you got to think positive. Yeah, depending on what we think in the depending on what we think, what our mind is filled with, it really does create the world that is around us. What it is that we feel, it creates the world around us. Um, in the last season, I ended the review as Dexter killing his brother was a representation of Dexter actually killing that evil that was actually inside of him, killing it and stopping it from fully taking him over. And that was the symbolism of his brother. Sorry, I just got a weird smell. Um, but that was that. So with Dexter feeling a certain way, feeling very lost, feeling very claustrophobic, feeling like he's just kind of secluded and lost. You can see a little bit about how that manifested within Dokes' character and Dokes constantly watching him. Um, I say that because there's a lot of universal laws in Dexter, and one of the biggest laws was, I guess, attraction. every villain that shows up in every season of Dexter is a representation of something that Dexter is actually going through or trying to discover within himself. And within him trying to discover that thing, he ends up attracting these people who become big, important faces for certain chapters of his life. And that's when we get Trinity, and that's when we get Lila or Miguel, and people like that. So right now, as Dexter's feeling very isolated, you see Dokes kind of manifesting in that way, and later on, you do find Lila manifests also. So yeah, right here, Dexter says, "I really," or Angel, sorry, Angel Batista says, "Hey, ask the universe what you want." Dexter's like, "I really want to kill somebody." So the universe is like, "Okay, I'll give you an opportunity to do that." Dokes walks away. Dexter's like, "Oh, okay, cool, everything works out." This character, the blind character, I can't actually tell you what exactly he symbolizes. There's a lot of dark, dark stuff going on in that little story arc. Um, so yeah, like trying to explain all that, I really can't do that. So anyway, as I'm cutting through these episodes, yeah, Dexter is trying to get donuts for the kids, and he can't do it right. Usually, when we lose a piece of ourselves, what happens is we end up. It's like if life was like a linear river or path. What would happen is when we start to lose ourselves, we actually lose sight of that path, or we lose our momentum down that path, down that road. And what happens is we end up getting pulled, and everything just seems odd. It just seems off, and things just don't work out. The whole universe seems to be off. Usually, when we do lose a piece of ourselves, usually what happens, different pieces of ourselves, of who we are, puts us down a certain path in life. And what happens is when we find ourselves disconnected from those parts of ourselves, it makes it hard to really manifest things for the future or to keep things balanced within our own lives. Um, that's why they say you have to stay focused on who you are, honor who you are, and what your energy is. Because if you do not do that, and you take on other people's energies, your life will start to unfold in other people's directions, especially if you're a very empathic person. What will happen is you'll end up feeding off other people's energies, and you'll end up doing certain patterns or doing weird things that other people around you do, and you'll end up kind of strongly influenced by them. So it is important to really know how to have boundaries within yourself and to really just protect who you are and things like that. Um, yeah, so that's what's very important about that. Um, yeah, but as you start to connect with ourselves, and you start to connect with yourself, more of yourself, and you start to find who you are, then the universe and the world will start to strongly reflect more of who you are and who you're more in tune with. Until then, you're going to be like a ping pong ball going through so many things, and so many things are going to be happening to you just until you eventually find your way, your path, and your confidence and yourself again. Let's see. So, yeah, I guess while I'm fast forwarding, this one's not going to be as long as season one. Definitely not. But I remember when I first watched this season of Dexter, when I watched season. Oh, Paul. Let me explain Paul real quick. So Paul's character right now in season, what is it called? Paul's character in season one of Dexter. What Paul's character actually symbolized is like the disloyalty, abusive side of what Rita went through, and Dexter is not going to abuse Rita or anything like that. He's not doesn't want to be abusive or hurt her and the kids. He wants to be there. He wants to be present. He doesn't want to be, like that. So Paul's character kind of being locked away, that was Dexter, that was subconsciously, that was Dexter's addictive side, being locked away. So what happens is when Paul actually dies, that actually causes freedom within Dexter to actually explore. Well, that allows that addictive side to be free within Dexter's mind, basically, because Paul's character is no longer there to embody it. Now, the difference of that is that Dexter himself did not kill Paul. So, if Dexter actually killed Paul, then the symbolism of his death would have been different. But because Dexter didn't actually kill Paul, then that that whole destructive, addictive side remanifested within Dexter's life. And instead of it being within that character, Paul, it would remanifested within Dexter, which also then remanifested within Lila's character. So it was almost like Lila's character was Paul reincarnated symbolically. So in this first episode of Dexter, for season two, it's alive. Reference to Frankenstein, probably. Or a robot chicken. There's a anyway. So in this episode, there's this little girl. And this little girl's like, I guess she was a witness. She was a witness or something. But the family, the little girl and her dad and her mom, are too afraid to give a testament or talk about the person who killed their dad or big brother. Dexter feels like a child, a defenseless child, and he sees a lot of himself through this little girl because he sees, or he feels like there's this big obstacle within in front of him, and something bad will happen if he tries to stand up to it, or he just doesn't really know how to overcome this obstacle. The little girl and her mom trying to find the courage to tell or give the identity of the killer who killed their family member. She was that story arc between the little girl and her mom, that was a reflection of what Dexter's going through inside of himself, and little Chino is the manifestation of what the family's going through, but also what Dexter's going through. So there's like a correlation there, like a little connecting the dots there. um so yeah, fear to the little girl is what Chino is to Dexter, basically. And yeah, Dexter finds himself and sees himself within the world around him. So it's not always literally, explained. Right after that, we have a flashback or a scene of Dexter having a flashback with his dad and accidentally shooting, and um, he Dexter, teenage Dexter, puts his hand on his dad's chest and is like, "Oh, your heartbeat, that's amazing." And yeah, Dexter sees little Chino. He's like, "A challenge, something that'll get me back up and going again." I remember watching. I remember watching the first time I watched Dexter season two. I believe I saw season three of Dexter first. I saw the episode where Dexter was on the boat and something happened with Rita and everything, and he went to the hospital, and um, Deb was like, "Where were you? You were trying to call you and all this," and Dexter was like, "I was busy." And he talked to Miguel, and Miguel was like, "I know what you were doing on that boat. Blah blah blah. I want to get my hands dirty," something like that. That was like the first episode. And I caught that last scene and it ended, and I was like, okay. So I kept seeing previews of Dexter, of the new season of Dexter starting soon, and it was the previews for season 4. So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna. At this point, I got HBO, I got Showtime, and I loved watching a bunch of movies at that time. So I was like, I'm gonna watch this show, Dexter. I don't care what season they're on. Um, I want to watch it. I'm just gonna watch it wherever it's at and just start a season from scratch. And if I like it, then I'll watch the rest of the show. So I started watching. So right when season 4 was gonna premiere, I ended up tuning in a bit early, and I ended up catching the season. I ended up catching this TV show called Weeds, and I saw the biggest. I can't spoil it, but I saw like this biggest ending to that episode, and I was like, "Oh, whoa, what just happened? What's this craziness?" And after the episode ended, the cast and crew were talking about the episode, and I was like, "Wait a minute, what happened? Was that like the end of the show?" So I looked it up, and it was the finale of season 7, I believe, and that's when like everything that's been building up for the whole show ends at that point. And I was like, "Oh wow!" I caught the end of season 7 of Weeds, and I was like, I might have to watch that show." So right after that ended, Dexter season 4 premiered. Watched season 4, loved it, and then I went back to season 3, I believe, and just finished that off. And then I jumped to season 1, and then I watched season 2. And I remember when I got the DVD for season 2, I found it at a Barnes and Noble at the mall, and I was so excited to watch it. And I was like, I'm just gonna watch this first episode, few episodes, and I ended up getting so hooked on the first season that I watched the entire second season in one sit down. My DVD player was so hot. It was I've never seen it that hot. The discs were coming out hot. I thought it was gonna blow up, honestly. But I got so addicted, and once I saw the end of season 2, I was upset. I was like, no, that's it. I watched all 4 seasons. Then I had to wait a year to watch season 5. But yeah, that's my story of how I got into season 2. Okay, so we have Deborah working out a lot after what the events of season 1. Um, with this with this season focusing a lot on the idea of addiction, you can see in Deb's character that her working out is a form of addiction to try and suppress her PTSD. And with LaGuardia's character losing her job, you can see that her addiction is very one dimensional of, hey, how can I ruin this person's life to just get what I want? That can also be a form of addiction to where your focus your focus could be on something so potently that you end up becoming this force of chaos, and you can end up just destroying other people's lives and hurting them and things like that. But you can see that LaGuardia's addiction is very much so of, I like to play the game, I like drama, I like to knock people down to get what I want. Chaos, you know. And yeah, Deb's addiction manifests in um, suppression. Real quick, this actor who played, so the woman that replaced LaGuardia's job in season 2 at the very beginning. Of course, LaGuardia cheated on her with her boyfriend and everything like that. The actor who played her boyfriend, I wish I could remember his name, but he was actually on season 3 of Heroes. Um, Around the time that this aired, I believe he may have been filming that 2007. Yeah. But he played a character named Echo. It was a little side story. He was a mailman who had the ability to create loud sounds whenever he screamed, and he would scream all the dogs away, or whenever they would chase him. But yeah, he did show up in a few episodes of Heroes, as well as a few other actors who were on this show who found their way into Heroes. All right, so let's talk about this scene with Rita and Deb. I feel like it was important as I was scooping through the episode. This is one of the few scenes that Rita actually did with her, with Deb, Jennifer Carpenter. It's one of the few scenes she did with another one of the cast members. Rita's character and actor is so disconnected from all the other cast members into what the show is about. She usually just does scenes with Michael C. Hall, and that's about it, and the kids. As they're talking, you can see that Rita says, I find myself missing the best parts of him. The thing about love is a very complex thing, and I do have to stress this. In my last recording in season one, I had access a partial breakdown in the recording. If anyone actually listened to it, about like maybe an hour, 38 minutes in, or something like that, I actually got some bad news about or a bad situation happening to someone close to me. And it's kind of just being triggered now. So, the thing about love is, I don't want to say we take it for granted, but we can find ourselves hating people for being bad, for doing terrible things to us, for hurting us in so many ways. At the same time, what really matters is the love that was invested in, and the good memories that we shared with these people, the good experiences that we all had together. Love is the strongest bond ever. When it comes to ex relationships, because that is the context of this scene, I've had a few relationships, and I still love every single one of those women, every single one of those girls. I still love them and feel the same about them. Um, I almost got married at one point, and I still miss her. I think we broke up in 2017, maybe 16 or 17, and to this day, almost every single day, she still pops up in my head. Almost every single day of my life. We don't talk, we don't communicate, nothing's there. But I still think about all the great times that we had together, all the time that we spent, all those great memories that deserve to be cherished. Bad things will happen, bad things will happen. And the thing is, when they happen, do we leave or do we stay and try to fix it? What matters most? A lot of us stay in survival mode and we say, you know what? I am not dealing with this. I'm going to protect myself because you're a butt and I'm leaving. So bye. But then you also have people who say, you know what? The love that we have is something I don't want to let go of and I want to keep. So I want to stay and help you out with this. I want to stay and we can fight to help fix this. Um, that can be hard when it comes to certain topics, um, and reference to the main themes of this season, which is about addiction. I'm mainly stressing this scene because if you do have an ex-boyfriend, ex-girlfriend, whatever, just remember all the great times that you guys had together, and learn how to cherish that you had another soul that was with you in life. Doesn't matter how bad your parents treated you, how bad a person treated you, a friend, if they died or when they died and you have to go to their funeral, you're going to mostly remember all the fun times that you had with them. You're going to remember all the great things that you guys experienced. And the grief sets in that, oh, that's it. Those memories that you had is all that you have left. and there is no forming new ones. That's just the messed up thing about death. And talking about a show about death and serial killers, I can't fully censor that word. Sorry. So, even with my best friend, if she's gone, my friend, if I never see her, if I never see my friend again, that I'm referring to in the last recording, if I never do, I always cherish every moment we had together, every moment we shared. Moving forward with relationships, I'm always going to cherish the relationships and interactions I've had with people. We all should do that. When they're gone, they're gone. So just enjoy those memories and don't be so hard on people when things get rough. Um, the darker side of that, I'll get more into that later. But yeah, um, yeah.
Cada noche hay violencia en mi vecindad. ¿Y por qué? Porque la policía no hace nada. Señora, más despacio. Please, slower. Más despacio. She's saying you fucking cops don't do nothing. Grandma really talks like that? Yeah, exactly. But you get the point. Right, bitch?
I forgot how just off the hook some of the writing was in this show. Oh my gosh. And the show is so depressing. This season is so depressing. But it is about, trying to recover from trauma and PTSD and things like that. This is an insert. There's going to be a loud buzzing sound for the rest of the recording up until 48 minutes and 5 seconds. Pause the recording. All right. Let's talk about this whole dealing with death arc that's in this. 30 minutes in, I'm barely on episode 2. The thing is, if we don't, yeah, everyone has their own way of processing death and all that, blah blah blah. But not blah blah blah. But the thing is, death doesn't always mean a person. It can also mean a part of ourselves. And the thing is, if we don't give those parts of ourselves a proper, I guess, going away or a proper grief, then they kind of linger. They don't go away. They don't go away. They kind of sit there with us, and they sit there as like a type of energy cancer in a way. And until we learn how to really deal with it and say, hey, I'm gonna grieve for you. Thank you for everything. I'm going to let you be free. Until we do that, then these things exist as dark, dense energy within us, within mentally, within us, spiritually or emotionally. I always say those three things. But the thing is, we have to also learn how to grieve certain parts of ourselves. Grieving is to give things a healthy goodbye, and the thing is, once something dies, it kind of gets in this weird cocoon or this weird state, and I don't know how to really word this properly, but it is very important that we give goodbye and grievances to things, even parts of ourselves, even if we have an injury, if we have to get a transplant, a body transplant, if there's a part of our lives, part of like our inner child, our inner selves, it's important that we say, hey, I'm gonna throw a funeral for you. I want to give a service for you. The importance of birthdays revolves around that idea of a lot of people say, oh, birthdays are just a narcissistic thing. I don't know where that came from, but there's a day where you want to feel special. But I don't want to get into the philosophy of a birthday. some people look at birthdays as you're celebrating that you've been alive all this time, where some people view birthdays as this is the first day that you are this age and you have 1 year to live this age. Congratulations, you are reborn. You're reborn on this day. So some people look at birthdays as a celebration of old self of you dying. Some people look at birthdays as a rebirth of you coming into a new part of yourself. Birthdays are supposed to, some people celebrate birthdays as a symbolism of this is a new version of yourself, and we want you to enter this new age of who you are with a celebration with people around who love you, and even that itself can be a grievance. It could be a grievance. A happy birthday party can be a grievance of you letting go of the old year, the old version of you, and you coming into a new version of you. There are different things such as bar mitzvahs, um, whatever. There's a bunch of different religious things, different ceremonies and things like that that really symbolize coming into something new or coming into a new version of oneself. That is also a type of grief. Grieving process is being reborn. Um, Grieving can be starting something new, a new chapter, but it is very, very important to pay respects for what has been there, this entire time. Sometimes when we have relationships, we'll reconnect with an old person, with an old relationship, and we'll be like, you know what? I've had all these mixed feelings about this person, and I've been so obsessed with them since we broke up, and I've been angry, and now I've seen them in the street, and we reconnected, and all those addicting emotions, all those crazy feelings that I had for them, they're just gone. I saw them, and now they're all gone, and I felt, just I was able to move on. That also is a form of grieving. It was these two souls were disconnected, and things did not have a good closure to them. And sometimes when you guys come together, it allows your energies to reconnect and find better closure just within meeting after all this time. And sometimes an addiction, especially to a person, all that really is a need, a very, very deep need to want to intimately bond with this person or just to intimately connect with this person. That does not mean sexually, it just means to reconnect and bond. And sometimes that's all that's needed to have closure is just a reconnection. Okay. Okay, I didn't realize that this whole time the air was blowing into my microphone that close. And I have no idea how the quality of this entire recording is going to come out. So I have to replace the recording for the next minute or so. And then I can do, okay, 5 seconds. Cool, now let me test it. Alright, I'm not sure why my voice is coming out so mumbly over these recordings. I don't know, it bugs me. It really bugs me that the quality comes out different. But, hopefully for those that were paying attention, this is supposed to be a high quality microphone. I'll go on Instagram or YouTube and an ad will pop up and you can see the mics that these people are using. I'm using that exact mic, and my voice does not come out as good quality, but they probably have an enhancer. Because this is just raw audio, unedited, so it's probably what's going on. Me trying to fix my microphone, I kind of threw out the momentum of what I was talking about. But oh yeah, Deb and her symptoms, and Dexter and his symptoms. Yeah, if you don't know how to deal with the past, then of course it's going to constantly hunt you. And when it haunts you, then you're gonna have all these symptoms of anger and aggression, and I have to force things to go my way. Okay, so while we're here, we'll talk a little bit about Rita's behavior right now. Uh, so yeah, of course, Rita is going through grief and everything. At the same time, she's been through having to deal with an addict. She's sorry. So yeah, what Rita's going through right now. She's dealt with an addict before, and at the same time, she has to learn how to really take control of her life and really take control of what she wants for her future, what she wants for the future of her children, things like that. Uh, August 20 something, I had a similar experience where something happened, and I made a decision. I had to. So we come to a point in our life when we have to make a choice on what is going to happen with our life or our future. And when there are certain destructive entities or dark things that really take a hold of us or control us, it's important that we make the decision to say, hey, I have to take control of my future. I have to take control of how I want to feel, what I allow myself to feel, and things like that. We'll end up falling more into abusive situations if we don't learn how to find that boundary, how to find that there. I had a conversation with a close friend last night, and of course, when you're texting, it's different when you're trying to explain versus talking on the phone. So I just sent these two long walls of text, and I'm like, I could have just explained this in 3 minutes if I had called, and but that's like, it just gets weird when you're typing stuff versus talking stuff out, and I never got a response. But we were having a conversation until the long text hit. But the point was falling into situations where you start to really hate yourself or hate your life or hate your circumstances and things like that. And how exactly do you get past it? How do you move past it? Sometimes it's just something bad happens to where you get frustrated, and once that frustration gets you to a boiling point, you kind of just say, I'm done with this. I'm done dealing with this. And you get to a point where you have to realize that you have to take control of your future, and you have to take control of what you allow yourself to feel and what you allow yourself to go through. And you don't have to be overly aggressive about it, but you do realize that you have to create the future that you want for yourself through your actions and through your boundaries. And Rita is getting to that point, especially when going through this arc of dealing with an addiction or dealing with an addict and dealing with a destructive force altogether. It doesn't just have to be an addict; it can also be a form of narcissism, and just how a narcissist person treated you or influenced you, or the grip that they've had over you, the invisible grip that they have over you. And I'm sure a lot of people who know what I'm talking about when you have that invisible monster that is constantly running your life, ruining your life, hitting you in all your weak spots. And it's like they have this sixth sense, like and they just know that you're having a good day, you're away from this person, but they just instinctively know that you're having a good time, and they will call you, or they will send you a message, or they'll say something to you out of the blue and completely hit that right spot that just ruins your day. Any other day, if they said this to you, you would be fine. But it seems to be they knew the exact thing to say at that exact moment that just completely ruined your day and destroyed your happiness. Those people who you guys know what I'm talking about. Those kinds of people, when they have that kind of a grip on you, where it's like a weird psychic link. And a lot of times you have people who really become physical manifestations of that. It's very important to have boundaries against those people. Very important to have that boundary to take control of your life and take control of of how you're going to move on and heal. Um, that is also a form of moving on of grief, and grief is also about letting go of how things took a hold of you and took a hold of your life, and to understand that your life is what you make it and it is in your hands. You'll have to find that revelation. Giving someone that advice and saying, you have control over your life, that is not a good thing to say to somebody who does not understand what that means, or they have a huge block from getting to that revelation. Just trying to tell people what their power is or what they're capable of isn't enough. They have to know what that means energetically, or subconscious or mentally, what that means emotionally. What does that actually mean to be in control of your life, or to have that kind of power over your own future, and how to properly forge that. Feeling empowered and being a powerful person are very two different things. Sometimes feeling empowered just makes you feel strong, or makes you feel like you can take on the world. It gets you hyped up, gets you all this energy. But being empowered is when you understand, oh, I have the capability of doing a lot of things, and with all the things I'm capable of doing, I want to focus on forging a better path towards what I want to experience and what I want to, hit me, to be attracted my way. Um, so it is important to have a healthy sense of grief and letting go of the past, because if you bury the past and you continue to try and move on, you're just going to be angry, and you're just going to constantly reattract everything that you're trying to run away from, and you end up running into the very thing that you're trying to avoid. That includes bad relationships, that includes leaving one abusive relationship and jumping right into a next one, right into another one, when you think, oh, this is a good relationship, this is a good guy, and then you end up repeating that same cycle. Even if it's a 1 in a million chance that this person exists with this personality, somehow you end up attracting these people. And it's not the world, it's not everybody. It's just the fact that this is what you're attracted to, this is what you attract, because this is something that is inside of you, and you haven't found a healthy grief grief system to let that go. Okay, I'm testing my mic right now. Hopefully the rest of this recording comes out sounding a lot better. All right, here I am a few hours later, and my volume is fluctuating pretty good. So yeah, I was able to kind of fix that. I thought my whole recording was bad, but I was able to go back, and it messed up around 32 minutes and messed up to about 48 minutes. Um, Mainly the areas where I talked about death and grief, which was interesting. But yeah, so now I had to switch to my PS5. It's a lot quieter. You don't hear that loud noise in the background. And unfortunately, I don't have the digital copies anymore, so I can't just fly through everything. Now I have to put the DVDs in. It's a lot slower going to each episode. It's a lot slower, fast forwarding and all that. So it's going to take a bit longer now on my end. But yeah, I got everything figured out, and now I am. Yeah, so the audio should be a lot better from here on out. Okay, so I just watched the scene with Dexter and Rita when Rita confronts Dexter, and she says, "Hey, you hit Paul," and he's like, "Yeah," impulsively, and she says, "How'd you know how much drugs to use on him and everything?" When she knocked him out and set him up, when he knocked him out and set him up. So it turns into she pressures him and says, "Hey, Dexter, are you an addict? And if there's something between us, you need to be honest about it." And Dexter says, "Yes, he has an addiction." The thing is, the parallel of the show is what a lot of what Dexter goes through that he feels makes him a monster. It is something that a lot of people in everyday life go through. The thing is, if how Rita is reacting in this situation and in this moment is more of how a normal couple or normal people would react as to something along the lines of this kind of a situation. Now, the labels can manifest in different kinds of ways. But the thing about the relationship between Dexter and Rita and how the show portrays their relationship is Rita doesn't, it doesn't matter what the label is or how Dexter puts a label or a name of what this thing is he feels. It's the fact that he feels this way and has these messed up symptoms inside of him that makes him feel disconnected from love or from his heart or from life itself or from just feeling human. Now, the reason why him saying he's a serial killer is not a part of the bigger picture of the Rita's arc is because the audience needs to find their own way to connect with what Dexter is going through. And Dexter's symptoms is how we connect with him. It's our symptoms and symptoms that he goes through. It's a psychological battle. The whole labeling serial killer thing is more of a dramatized thing to keep the show interesting. But if you're gonna make a series or a show about the psychology of human behavior and things like that, there's so many different ways that you can do it. But to really make it an interesting hook for the audience is to make it something so so different, so anti-hero, and that is where the label of serial killer comes from. The underlying layer, what Dexter is not about a serial killer at all. The serial killer aspect is just there for the sake of making the story seem more interesting than what it actually is, or for the serial killer arc to be a mask that's being told versus internally the whole story of Dexter is telling a story about the human condition as a whole. So no one's going to watch a TV show about people going through mental stuff like that when you don't have a deep depth to it. So that's why the whole serial killer thing is there to really give a sense of here's something leading when really it's everything that's behind that's building up is what the show is actually about. So a lot of people wonder, oh, Rita catching Dexter, what's your reactions going to be? She can never symbolically Rita can never actually catch Dexter. And this season actually explores more of if she did catch him or whatever. But it's what's important is not the hardcore label. It's the symptoms of what Dexter's going through and how his partner reacts to those symptoms to help him reach a healthier space emotionally. So that's why the label does not matter about him being a serial killer. So him saying addiction, she thinks it's a drug addiction, whereas him, it's a serial killer addiction. But now the same thing is put in place. There is an addiction going on, and it has to be handled. And of course, Rita is going to be low. She's going to stay there, and she's going to say, "Hey, I'm a I'm going to be here for you, and I'm going to help you get through this." That is a big choice, a big decision to make when you're going to help somebody out. I've had a family, and my family, um, I can't, I don't want to put anyone's business out there, but I've had some people in my family. I was very young, 6 years old, and someone, one of my parents said, was with somebody and said, "Hey, they found out that they had a drug addiction, and my parent was like, "I will sit here and I will be or work with you." And now we jump ahead, over 20 years later, and it's been almost 25 years of a whole lifetime that has been stolen and taken away and reshaped because of these drug habits. And being 6 years old and being exposed to that, and now being in my 30s and seeing how it shaped my entire life and childhood, what it took away from me, what experiences it took away from the bond that I could have had with my family and things like that. Yeah, you can't do anything about that. But the fact that drugs was a big thing that took that away says a lot. If you are going to be there for somebody through something like this, there is a lot that you have to think about. There's a lot. You just have to be very careful about it. I'm speaking from my personal experience when I say that it didn't work out very well, at least from what I see. I look from a place of loss from what I've lost due to, my family taking that path. Um, if you are going to be there for somebody, accept somebody, and be with them, just be very careful with it. Is all I'm going to say. Make sure that the other person is actually trying to change. Make sure that they are really trying to help themselves. They're not just trying to manipulate you. um, that's all. Yeah. So just be very careful about that. I don't want to go too far into that because that's too much of a sore spot for too many people, and I can't. I don't want to spend too much time on that. The end of this episode 2, Dexter has a symbol that reminds him of his brother, and now it is time to let go of that symbol. We always have something that symbolizes what we feel inside, and sometimes that physical thing has to be dealt with in such a way that better, you know, helps us move on from something that's going on inside of us. So, yeah, Dexter has the head of the doll, and he grieves and he learns to let it go. As he lets it go, his brother reaches out and grabs him. No. Yeah, he sends his brother off into the darkness. Alright, and that's the end of that episode. Cool. Let me pause my recording. Alright, so, um, this next scene that I just watched, episode 3 of season 2, the police station is going crazy. Everyone's going crazy. Everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, here's all these missing person, this missing person," and everyone's Dexter's like, "What's going on? Why is there so much chaos going on?" So what Batista, Angel, what Angel was saying was, she's caught up in a negative cycle, and she's not being a co-creator of her own life, and she's manifesting all this chaos. What that means is, um, being involved in a bad negative situation myself. What happens is when you become a victim of circumstance and you get caught up in a cycle of chaos, what happens is you end up just kind of reacting to what is happening around you. You just, whatever it is that's happening, you take it as this is happening to me, and you just react that way to all this chaos, and then you end up creating this uncontrollable cyclone of chaos, and you manifest it. Whenever you have people under you, or if you are a leader of a group, if you are the leader of a household, then it's important that you become what Angel Batista says, a co-creator. If you just become a victim of circumstance or you just react to circumstances, then that means you become a victim to whatever, negative or bad thing happens to you. Oh, sorry. You don't learn how to use that to your own benefit and to create a better circumstance or better situation. Um, Yeah, so as Angel was saying, you cannot be a victim. You can't be a victim of circumstance. And when you are a leader or you are head of a household, then what will actually happen is other people's mess, other people's chaos, other people's bad habits or their, chaotic junkiness or whatever, their anger, their issues. What happens is their issues start to affect you, and you start reacting to whatever it is that is happening in their life. You become a victim to somebody else's life. And if you have children, if you have a team, if you overlook some people, then you're going to take all that negativity from this outside source and you're going to embody it yourself. And then you're going to pass it down to those that are underneath you or those who are looking up to you. It is a very that is a very important theme when it comes to this idea of addiction. So I did have to pause to mention this small scene in this episode. All right, so now this next scene, Dexter goes to the meeting and gets his newcomer's chip finally. While he's up there, he has to talk for 3 minutes, which he talks for like 10 seconds. But he makes a small joke, and he's like, "Oh, my name's Bob," and he says, "I'm an addict of this," and he kind of tries to fake a little bit, make everyone laugh, but then he stops, and there's a moment there that his the reality starts to sink in, and he stops, and he just says, "Yeah, I almost died," and just kind of leaves it at that. Next scene happens. A lot of while this is going on, the divers found Dexter's body. And now what this is Dex is now this is when we get to the point of addiction where it is exposure, and darkness being reflected back at us. Dexter's dead bodies being discovered and found in the bottom of the ocean are a symbolism of the fact that Dexter's darkness is now being exposed to the world, where it's not just stuck in his own mind or stuck in his own head and something for him to deal with, but now it's exposed to the outside world that in his home area, with his romantic area with Rita. Now she sees that he has an addiction, so now that addictive part of himself is now exposed, and now his body parts are being exposed. So now we get into this idea now of, or this chapter now, that okay, now there's a darkness that is being brought to the surface to have to be dealt with now. And when we go through certain habits or addictions, this becomes a very potent and important thing to acknowledge when it comes to this journey. Um, Being able to expose darkness. I remember when I was younger and I had my darkness and I kept it bottled up inside for a very long time, for most of my life. It wasn't until I was out of high school. I was out of high school and I started to finally open up to certain people. And my pain really did manifest strongly in my life, in my adult life. Once my darkness hit the surface, it my life reshaped in a very in such a way, such a big way. But um, still trying to deal with it, and a big part of that darkness had a very powerful closing chapter. Actually, about 2 weeks ago, to this day that I'm recording this. But yeah, now we get to the point of darkness being exposed. Okay, it's been a minute. I just watched the scene when Deb asked to be replaced by Lundy. So when it comes to a lot of addictions that we go through, Bashar, a spiritual enlightener, a spiritual teacher, he mentions that one of the things about addiction is that it comes from this ability of feeling out of control, that you don't have control over something about yourself, and that it manifests as this thing called addiction. A lot of times we don't always address that source issue. Deb says to Lundy, I want to be off this task force. I want to be off your special forces. We're trying to capture the Bay Harbor Butcher Killer, being Dexter. So, he asks her, he sits down, he asks her why. Why do you want to be off? You know, and she's just like, yo, I don't want to be a part of your task force. She is aggressive about it. Well, he says, everyone wants to be on it. You want to be off. You don't tell me why you want to be off of it. So as she starts to explain it, she gets to a point where she's talking and she stops and she inhales and then she tries to regain herself or get her footing back, her mental footing back. As she's trying to get her mental footing back, Lundy actually cuts her off. Special Agent FBI Lundy cuts her off and says, "Hey, that's why I chose you." He waited until she got into a certain emotional space, and then he waited to attack her just at that moment as she took that breath to try and reground herself to further explain why she shouldn't be there. And before she could fully gather her thoughts, he intervened and reprogrammed what story her mind tells itself. That is a form of reprogramming one's own mind or one's mind and actually bringing a sense of healing within something that is broken. As she starts to again find the reason why she shouldn't be on this special force, trying to find this special serial killer, and she's thinking of the doubts within her, he intervenes and injects something different within her mind, which is this pain, this trauma, this source of your addiction and your escapism. This source doesn't have to manifest itself as a bad habit or as her addiction to working out. In Deb's case, her addiction in the season was working out and going to the gym to further her escapism and music from her PTSD. Well, what he says is instead of running from it and letting it manifest through all these random habits, you can find a way to take that pain and put it into something better, and then you can create something better, or you can save somebody who's been through the same situation as you've been in, and you can help someone else who's been through something horrifying as you have. You can take your PTSD or your trauma, your pain, and you can turn it into something that can be used to help others, not just to let it consume who you are. Um, and then, as that is addressed, he tells her, now that that's been put on the table, he tells her now that your full focus is on the situation at hand. Now go ahead and finish out this task of interviewing these people. And afterward, if you want to quit, if this is something you truly want to do, then okay, then you can quit. But he gives her that control, he gives her that option. And that's just a type of that's just a psychological thing when it comes to healing in certain habits. I just had to bring that up. Okay, so the next scene I'm going to talk about is the scene when Dexter went to his AA meeting or his meeting. And what he was saying was, "Hi, I'm Dexter," finally giving his real name and saying, "I don't know what I am." Now we get to a deeper sense of truth and what truth is. The truth is, the thing about deception and truth is the fact that deception takes away from the truth. And the real raw potency of the truth is that You can't really label it. Once you begin to label the truth, then you basically kind of take away from it in some sense or whatever. But I guess the main thing I'm trying to say without getting too philosophical is the fact that now that Dexter says, I am Dexter and I don't know what I am, now he's beginning to feel the truth of what he is. It's not about how can we find words or how can we find labels. You sometimes have to wonder if there were people in the world who cannot actually say words, if they can't spell, or if they were illiterate, or they couldn't spell words or they couldn't speak words, how would they actually be able to process what it is they were feeling inside at a soulful level, and how would that be translated? If there was no verbal being there or no written being there, you can't say that it's impossible for a human to not feel anything. Now, then we start getting into different languages and how different words mean different things in different languages. So now, if there is no language barrier, how does one actually feel the truth of what it is they're going through? And what if they didn't have any words to label what it is that they were saying? Now, when that happens, that's when we start to get into a sense of what truth is. So now when Dexter says, I don't know what I am, now that's when he gets into the realm of what truth is. Truth really is a big question because it is an infinite potential of what it can be or what it can create or what it can mean to somebody. So as he's talking, he's saying, suddenly the mask gets taken down and people who didn't matter before start to matter. That's because it's usually the mask or the dark side of us that usually blocks us from feeling our true feelings because we're afraid to be vulnerable around people, or we're afraid to connect with people. We're afraid that people are going to see the source or the core of who we are, and we try to put on this mask or this fake version of ourselves so that the world will look at us a certain way and maybe treat us a certain way. We just can't handle that deep rejection. um Once it gets toward the end, there was something else that Dexter said that I really wanted to talk about, and I can't remember what it was. And the last thing I want to talk about is with Dokes, as Doke shows up at the meeting. But let me see. The last thing that Dexter said, um, yeah, it terrifies him. Oh yes, yes. He feels like no one can actually love him for who he truly is. Especially not him, especially not himself. No one will love him if he opens up to fully, and there's no way that he can actually love himself. And he says, "Is that? I don't know if that's actually true, or if that's just something that the darkness tells me. A lot of times, darkness will tell us, will block us from being able to love ourselves or to accept love from outside sources as a way of survival or a way to protect us from something. But it's usually not the truth. It's just a dark, hardened shell that's created, or a shadow that's there to try and keep us or put us in survival mode. But the thing is, if that survival mode isn't there, then we can actually start to live. We can actually start feeling life. As Dexter starts to open up to the truth of himself and is actually seeing the benefits of these meetings, and he's getting to a point where he's able to be more honest with himself and be more honest out loud about what he's going through and what he feels. Well, what happens is Doke shows up. Now, this is because Dexter has manifested not being trapped anymore within his own feelings, within his own emotions. He doesn't feel like a trapped animal anymore, and now he's able to open up and explore and openly talk about what this dark feeling is inside of him, and to kind of express, hey, I do have something inside of me, and this is how it's making me feel. By him giving himself that level of freedom, he no longer has that spirit of entrapment or feeling like a defenseless animal. So the fact that he purged that feeling within his own heart uh, manifested as Doke saying, "Oh, this is where you've been all this time. Just stay clean and stay out of my way." And he left, and I'll leave you alone. So now, when Dokes has been tailing Dexter throughout the whole season, now that Dexter has shed the feeling of entrapment within himself, Dokes was the physical representation of that entrapment throughout the beginning of this season. So now that Dexter feels free within himself, now physically that's shown as Dokes leaving. Now that Dexter has closed that door, he reopens another door, and now we get Lila's character. Okay, okay, so um, I skipped ahead a little bit, and now I'm on episode 5 of season 2, The Dark Defender. Reference to Batman, of course. So, one thing Lila told Dexter is, one of the first steps to recovering is to accept who you are. But the thing is, you have to know who you are first before you can accept it. So, to know who you are, it does take a lot of journeying into the past and to a lot of things that traumatized us and hurt us a long time ago. Once we understand or we connect with those things that hurt us so long ago, then it's easier for us to find the source of where our pain comes from, and therefore have a better way of connecting to what makes us addicted to certain things or gives us certain habits. Um, there's some studies that talk a lot about sexual fetishes and kinks and things like that, and a lot of sexual desires and fetishes and fantasies that people have are actually a direct reflection of what their biggest trauma is. And that can be translated into a lot of things from, a lot of things. I'm not going to go down the whole sexual list. But, yeah, so a lot of times intimate acts, intimate connections, intimate, meditations, just intimate things like that that make us feel really interconnected or expressive or safe. These things can help us with connecting more with our deeper pain and to help us find the source of that pain. And then we're able to better have explore a better relationship with it and give it more of a better meaning other than it controlling us subconsciously or it manifesting as a demon within ourselves. If we don't learn how to do the inner work within ourselves, then even if we do find some clarity or we cleanse ourselves with something, well, what would end up happening is we end up developing these symptoms to where our darkness kind of makes us do these things, and we say, oh, it's my dark side, or it's something making me do it. And sometimes it's just the fact that we harbinge these dark things. We harbinge the home that attracts these dark things. And a lot of times, even if we do get cleansed, we become the creator of these demons sometimes. And we need to understand that we create the nest for them to grow and to remanifest. So until we learn the source of where our pain comes from, and better find a better place for that source, then subconsciously it does rule a lot of parts of ourselves. But again, that's what this whole thing is about. This whole journey, this whole talk. Right now in this scene that I have paused, Deb is talking with Lundy. Lundy is a very powerful father figure of Deb, and of course Deb's whole addiction. I guess you can call it Stockholm syndrome or something. But her attraction to Rudy was her attraction to Dexter's dark side, the part of Dexter that she could not reach. And dating Rudy subconsciously was her subconsciously trying to connect with that part of Dexter that she felt she never could reach. And Lundy to Deb is the father, basically. So, of course, she has daddy issues, and that manifests within Lundy. And yeah, but with Lundy and Deb, as well as Lila, And Lila and Dexter, these two characters seem to be a balanced, or Lundy is more of a balance to Deb's chaos, whereas Lila is the chaos to Dexter's balance. And the thing about that is Lila um, is introducing a chaos into Dexter's life, which better puts him in a situation where he feels uncomfortable and opens up to such a degree to where this chaos within him starts to kind of push him out of this shell that he's locked in. And that kind of helps him be more expressive in certain ways and be more open and not be as shut down as he is. And it's just to be more in tune with what this darkness is at his core, at his source. And it just better have a relationship with it. As for um, Deb, she's going crazy. She's all over the place. But Lundy is very well balanced. And with him being balanced, he's helping her get perspective through all of her chaos. And by doing that, it's allowing her to find more balance within herself. And as she feels more balance within herself, she will attract more balance within herself and she will create more balance for her own life. That will actually come more into play as she moves out of Dexter's apartment. So I'm kind of jumping a little bit ahead here, but um, yeah, I've been working on this for. I've recorded for only an hour and a half, but I've physically been working on this season for about 9 hours. I've been actually working on this for 9 hours. Um, Even though the recording's only one and one, so I am a little tired. I'm not gonna lie. And to mentally put myself in these spaces of addiction and bad habits, I definitely got to re-explore some dark sides of myself to authentically give across the message I'm trying to say. There's a lot I want to share with the world, and the thing is, through what I'm recording now, is the perspective that you guys are going to get from me, from my perspective on these subjects. And oops, wonder if that was my stomach actually. That was my stomach. But this is the only time you guys may ever, anyone ever gets to hear this. And when I pass away, these recordings that are left behind are going to be what people have to remember me by. And if someone can grow with these words, then there you go. So yeah, what I say now, what it is. Okay, so I am actually recording this about 10 days later. For whatever reason, I just recorded a commentary for the Forever Purge. And for whatever reason, half of my recording for Dexter Season 2 got completely deleted out of nowhere. So the whole review is gone, and that was 16 hours of work total. I do apologize for not having an in-depth analysis of this season. I cannot do that a second time. That was a lot of work. So, to make it very simple, in season two, um, Masuka represented Dexter's lust. Dokes represented Dexter getting caught, basically. So the whole obsession that Masuka had with Lila was basically the fact that Dexter lusted for Lila. Also, Lundy's character represented relics from the past, but also was a strong sense of a father figure for Deb. There was a scene where Dexter killed an imposter, Bay Harbor Butcher fake, and when they were there, um, Lundy said something like he needs Dexter, and Deborah was like, "Oh, okay, I understand you need Dexter." He's like, "Oh no, it has nothing to do with Dexter. It's Masuka. I can't stand him." And Deborah gets excited and is like, "Oh, thank you," and hugs him. That's because she's always wanted her father's approval over Dexter, and Lundy gave her that in that moment, which is why Deb got so excited and hugged Lundy so much. Um, Dexter falling more into the dark side and him separating from Rita. Basically, what that was is supposed to do these recordings when people aren't here. Basically, what that is was that Dexter had to find himself. He didn't know who he was. He was gaslit by his dad. Dexter didn't know who he was, so he didn't know how to accept himself. By trying to explore who he was and find himself, he fell down a path of chaos. And him and Rita separating was because Dexter had to fully explore his dark side to find the root of what his addiction was. As for what most of us do have to do is explore the truth of who we are, and that may come out very ugly. It may cause a lot of fights, but we have to truly find ourselves in life, and we're not always going to be in the good graces of people when it comes to self exploration. So there's multiple times when Dexter does give into his chaotic, unpredictable side and falls into the path of Lila. And as we can see, Lila begins to gaslight Dexter after a while and manipulate him. When we get toward the end of the season, um, a very key scene is when Dexter plays around with the idea of turning himself in. When he plays around with that idea of turning himself in, Dokes gets put in a cage. What that means is now Dexter's at the pinnacle of who he is as an individual or as an entity. And it is, what path is he going to choose? The path of going out about the world, or is he going to choose the path of turning himself into the police, which is what Dokes represented, the suspicion of Dexter getting caught and Dexter ultimately being caught. So now that Dexter's playing around with this idea, Dokes is stuck in a cage, which represents Dexter having to deal with choosing his destiny right now. Um, Dexter decides, okay, I'm going to turn myself in, fully accepts that side of his destiny, and he goes to talk to Deb one last time. And when he talks to Deb, they have stakes, and Deb represents Dexter's humanity. As Dexter's talking to his humanity, he realizes that the best parts of life come from his human side, and that's the side he wants to cherish. So after speaking with Deborah and saying, I choose life and the experiences of life, the very next scene, which is close to the finale, is when Lila finds Dokes and blows up the cabin. That was a representation of Dexter choosing not to turn himself into the police ultimately and choosing his freedom. And now that Dexter has fully chosen his freedom, he no longer is wanting to turn himself into the police or be arrested. So Dokes' character getting killed off was actually a representation of Dexter not being caught as a character. So that's why the producers of the show, the writers, after Dokes died, to honor what Dokes represented, Dexter was never meant to be caught and never can be caught, which is done in that symbolism. Um, in the burning house, and I'm sorry I'm skipping over all of this over, but this season was about anyway. When it gets to the part with the burning apartment, Rita is trying to burn down the apartment with Dexter inside. Dexter accepts that the darkness that he has with him is going to be there forever, and he accepts that. But he also accepts that the people around him, his family, his friends, are also vulnerable parts of who he is, and he accepts that. And he accepts that he wants to live life and live life with the vulnerabilities of all the people around him. Um, him breaking through the wall was basically him being reborn, and the flames represented burning of the past and creating a foundation for new life to grow. Sort of like a baptism, but with fire instead of water. Um, Whenever Dexter meets Lila in the aquarium, everything that Dexter said to Lila about her not feeling things, about her emotions being fake, all of that, Dexter, that is what Dexter is investing into her character. And that is ultimately what he kills in her by the end of the season. The fake version of himself, the unchecked version of himself, the chaos junkie, the lying. That's just that's this the version of himself that he kills. However, like I said, Lila was never supposed to die in season two by the producers, but she was killed off through fan service. But symbolically, she was supposed to stay alive. And you see Lila's symbolism manifest in Dexter New Blood. But the parts of Dexter that he invested into Lila is what he kills off in the show. And in season three, he decides to um, embrace life. This season was about addiction, and it was about obsession after a while, and the hardships of what addiction looks like and what we go through. And the thing is, a lot of the bad habits and addictions that we have come from a source of trauma, and we do have to explore the source of our trauma to really figure out what's going to happen with this addiction or bad habits, or how we can find positive voice or expression for these things. And I understand that this is a serious topic, um, but there's a lot of different versions of help, and I'm just talking about the main themes of this show and what they talked about. Again, I had a whole another hour and a half of going more in detail in this, so I am sorry that it's cut short, but that is the basics of what I said within that hour. Um, and of course, Rita having to go through the source of her darkness too, dealing with Paul, dealing with addiction, with her partner having addictions, dealing with her partners cheating, her partners being abusive in so many ways, and her reliving it with Dexter unintentionally, her having to learn to find strength to deal with those feelings and not be a harbinger of her own insecurities or insecurities, and PTSD and things like that. Um, Dokes having an addiction or an obsession with trying to figure Dexter out, and Dexter ultimately having mind control over him to where he headbutted him and said, "I control you because as long as you're obsessed with me and you're addicted to me, I have control over your emotional mindset." And he does. I had a whole reaction to the last two episodes. I gave reactions to how I first watched the show. I'm sorry I can't redo those. Um, but yeah, when we have our bad habits and things like that, things that stop us from wanting to be human, things that stop us from having a healthy closure, a healthy acceptance of the people around us, a healthy acceptance that they are going to make us feel vulnerable. The thing is, we have to explore the source of our pain. Um, and as we do that, it's going to manifest in so many ways, and it's going to be rough. It's going to be really hard to deal with. It's going to be ugly. We're going to be seen as the villains in some stories. But when it comes to self discovery, we have to learn how to master every part of ourselves. And we're never going to be able to escape hell if we are not willing to walk through it. And that is the symbolism of Dexter. Also, the symbolism of Dexter breaking through the flames of the apartment was him walking through his own hell, becoming his own villain, but then breaking out of that hell, and learning to master the best of himself and accept every form of himself and having a healthy acceptance and not falling so much into his addictions anymore. Don't be afraid to explore yourself, to explore your truth, and know that it's going to be painful, it's going to be emotional. Thank you for this, and yeah, season 2 of Dexter was about um, addiction and obsession. I hope you enjoyed this recording, and yeah, and like I said, Dokes dying in season 2 was a representation of Dexter not being able to be caught. Yeah, thank you for listening to this. And the last thing I want to say, the very last thing I do want to say is Dexter's obsession with Lila. One of the symptoms of healing from addiction, or healing in general. One of the side effects of healing in general will sometimes mean that the addiction will sometimes become stronger, or a habit will sometimes become stronger. That is kind of because when you get to the source of an addiction, or a source, I'm so sorry, the source of pain that caused the addiction, what will happen is that source will start to kind of unravel and surface, and it will need a new meaning or a new, I guess, like a new direction, a new definition, a new meaning for one's life. So once you do find that source of where a lot of our, bad habits may be coming from, as you start to heal from that, then you will notice that you may feel like you start to kind of overindulge in whatever the destructive habit was. It's only because the inner you is trying to heal, and it needs a new uh, outlet, in a sense, to express itself in. Having that new outlet can be very positive. um, One's bad habits of suppression can be changed to, this was once an addiction that hurt me, but now I have a habit or an addiction to helping people. Or now what was once an addiction is now an appreciation for life, or appreciation for what's around me. So just understand that most of the time bad habits or addictions are just expressions, but most bad habits are just expressions of something that is inside of us that we're suppressing, or that's broken, or has not been given a good meaning. So, yeah, I felt very strongly that I did have to relay that at the end of this. Thank you for listening to this, and you have a great night.